Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents, a folklore podcast where I read you to sleep or until the next story. I'm your host, Dustin. Today we are back in the book of Louisiana folktales written down by Alcée Fortier. The first story has a bit of Sleeping Beauty, and the second one has a popular folktale with roots in Africa. And the third story is all about not judging a book by its cover. Okay, let's begin. Story number 1. King Peacock. There once was a lady who was so pretty, that she never wanted to marry. She found something to criticize in all the suitors who presented themselves, saying of them, "Oh, you are too ugly. Oh, you are too small. You have too large a mouth." One day a fine man came. He was in a golden carriage drawn by 8 horses. He asked the lady to marry him, but she refused. He fell into a passion and told her that in 1 year she would have a daughter that would be much, much prettier than herself. The lady sent him away with scorn. Well, a year later she had a pretty little girl. When she saw that the child was so pretty, she shut her up in a room at the far end of the house with her nurse to attend to her. As the girl grew up, she became handsomer every day. The nurse never allowed her to leave the room, or even to look through the window. One day, however, while the old woman was sweeping the floor, she left the door open, and the young girl saw a large bird. "Nurse," said she, "what do you call that bird which is so pretty?" The woman was obliged to reply and said, "That is a peacock." "If I ever marry, I want to marry King Peacock." "May God hear you, my child." That very day the mother came, called the nurse into a corner, drew from under her skirt a great knife, and said, "I want you to kill my child. She has become much prettier than me." The nurse began to cry, and begged the lady to spare the poor child, but all in vain. That black heart could not be softened. When night came, the nurse said to the girl, "My poor child, I have to kill you. Your mother wants you to die." The girl was so good that she replied, "Well, kill me, nurse, if my mother wants it to be so." But the nurse answered, "No, I don't have the heart to do any such thing, my little one. Here, take these 3 seeds, throw yourself in the well, and drown yourself. But before jumping in the well, swallow one of these seeds, and you will not suffer at all." The girl thanked the nurse and went down to drown herself. She walked until she arrived at a large well. She threw herself into it, but before touching the water, she took one of the seeds and put it into her mouth. The seed, however, fell in the water, and it dried up the well immediately. The young lady was very sorry to see that there was no water left in the well, and getting out, she walked as far as a wood, in which she found a small house. She knocked at the door, and an old woman showed herself. When she saw the pretty young girl, she said, "Oh, my child, what do you come to do here? Don't you know that my husband is an ogre? He will eat you up." Then the girl answered, "That is what I want. My mother wants me to die." The woman replied, "If that is the case, come in, but it is a great pity." Poor girl sat down in a corner and cried a while she was waiting for the ogre. All at once they heard big footsteps, and as soon as the door was opened, the ogre said, "My wife, I smell fresh meat in here," and he ran towards the young girl. She, however, merely looked at him with her large eyes, and he stepped back, saying to his wife, "Do you think that I can eat such a pretty girl? She is so beautiful that I just want to look at her all the time." The girl said she was tired, so the ogre took her to the beautiful room and ordered his wife to fan her with peacock feathers while she was sleeping. The young lady said to herself, "It is better for me to die now, for perhaps the ogre will change his mind tomorrow and will eat me." She put one of her seeds in her mouth and fell into a deep sleep. She slept and slept, and the ogre's wife was fanning her the whole time. When 3 days had passed and she did not awake, The ogre looked at her and said, "It is a great pity, but I believe she is dead." He went to the town and bought a coffin made of gold. He put the girl in it and placed it on the river. The coffin then went floating down the river. Very far away, King Peacock was one day on the levee with all his princes to enjoy the cool breeze, when he saw something shining in the river. He ordered his courtiers to see what it was. They took a skiff and exclaimed, "It's a coffin," and they brought it to the king. When he saw the pretty girl, who appeared to be sleeping, he said, "Take her to my chamber," for he wished to try to awaken her. He put her on a bed and rubbed her hands and face with cologne water, but to no avail. Then he opened her mouth to see what pretty teeth she had. He saw something red in the front teeth and tried to take it off with a golden pin. It was a seed which fell to the floor. The young girl awoke and said, "I am so glad to see you." The king replied, "I am King Peacock, and I want to marry you." The girl said yes, and there was such a wedding that they sent me to relate the story everywhere, everywhere. The end.
In my days on that Louisiana shore, I'm going floating down the Mississippi River on my way to New Orleans.
Okay, story number 2. It's a little bit of a sad one. It's called The Singing Bones. Once upon a time, there lived a man and a woman who had 25 children. They were very poor. The man was good, and the woman was bad. Every day when the husband returned from his work, the wife served his dinner, but always meat without bones. "How is it that this meat has no bones?" "Because bones are heavy, and meat is cheaper without bones. They give me more for the money." The husband ate and said nothing. "How is it that you don't eat meat?" "You forget that I have no teeth. How do you expect me to eat meat without teeth?" "That is true," said the husband, and he said nothing more because he was afraid to grieve his wife, who was as wicked as she was ugly. When one has 25 children, one cannot think of all of them at the time, and one does not see if 1 or 2 are missing. One day after his dinner, the husband asked for his children. When they were by him, he counted them and found only 15. He asked his wife where the others were. She answered that they were at their grandmother's, and every day she would send one more for them to get a change of air. That was true. Every day there was one that was missing. One day the husband was at the threshold of his house, in front of a large stone which was there. He was thinking of his children, and he wanted to go and get them at their grandmother's, when he heard voices that were saying, "Our mother killed us, our father ate us. We are not in a coffin, we are not in the cemetery." At first he did not understand what the words meant, but he raised the great stone and saw a great quantity of bones, which began to sing again. "Our mother killed us, our father ate us. We are not in a coffin, we are not in the cemetery." He then understood that these were the bones of his children, whom his wife had killed and whom he had eaten. Then he was so angry that he killed his wife, and he buried his children's bones in the cemetery and stayed alone at his house. From that time he never ate meat, because he believed it would always be his children that he would be eating. The end.
My heart's a quiver. I'm returning to a lonely heart that is yearning down. In Louisiana, there's a gal. What's her name? Why, her name is Hannah, so I'm floating down the...
Okay, and story number 3, Simple John. There once was a fellow who was so foolish that everybody called him Simple John. He was so simple that everybody made fun of him. He would light the lamp in the daytime and put it out at night. He would take an umbrella with him only when it was very dark. In the summer he would put on a great coat, and in winter he would go nearly naked. In short, he did everything contrary to common sense. King Bang-on, who loved to play tricks, heard the sayings and deeds of Simple John, and sent for him to amuse his friends. When John came to the king, everyone began to laugh, as he looked so awkward. The king asked him if he knew how to count. John replied that he knew how to count eggs, that yesterday he had found 4 and 2. "How much does that make?" said the king. John went to count the eggs, and on returning said that there were 4 and 2. "Exactly," said the king. "But tell me, Simple John, they say that Brother Rabbit is your father." "Yes, he is." No, said someone else. "I think it's Brother Hyena." Yes, said Simple John. "Him too." No, said an old woman who was passing. "It is Renard who is your father." "Yes," said Simple John. "All of them, they are all my fathers. Every time one of them passes by me, he says, 'Good morning, my child.' I must believe, then, that they are all my fathers." Everybody laughed at Simple John. Then the king said, "Simple John, tomorrow morning I want you to bring me a bottle of bull's milk. It is to make medicine for my daughter who is sick and has a side ache in her back." "All right," said Simple John. "Early tomorrow morning I shall bring it." King Bang-on then said, "On the 1st of April, in 1 month, you will come. I want you to guess something. If you guess, I will give you my daughter in marriage. But if you try 3 times and do not succeed, my executioner will have to cut your neck." "All right," said Simple John. "I will try." And then he went away, pretending to go and get the bull's milk. When he reached home, he related to his mother all that had happened, and the old woman began to cry, and could not be consoled, because however foolish her boy was, she loved him, as he was her only child. She forbade him to go to the king, and threatened to tie him in her cabin, or to have the sheriff throw him in prison. Simple John paid no attention to his mother, and started off before daybreak with an axe on his shoulder. He soon arrived at the house of the king, and he climbed into a big oak tree, which was right in front of the door. He began, "Cow, cow, cow," to cut down the branches with his axe, and he woke up everybody in the house. One of the servants of the king came out to see what was the matter, and when he saw Simple John on the top of the tree, he said, "But what is your business there? Fool that you are disturbing everybody." "It is not your business, do you hear?" said Simple John. "Are you the watchdog barking like this in the yard? When your master, King Bang-on, comes, I will tell him what I am doing here." The king came out and asked Simple John what he was doing there. He replied that he was cutting the bark to make some tea for his father, who had been delivered 2 twins the day before. "What?" said the king. "For whom do you take me, Simple John? Where did you ever hear of a man in childbirth? I think you mean to make fun of me." "How is it that yesterday you asked me for a bottle of bull's milk? If you are right, I am also." The king replied, "I believe that you are not so foolish as you want to make people believe. Go to the kitchen and they will give you your breakfast. Don't forget to come on the 1st of April, so that we may see which of us will be the April Fool." On the 1st of April, Simple John mounted his horse and went out without his mother seeing him. Brother Hyena, who was deceitful and evil-minded, said, "I shall prevent Simple John from going, because I know he is so foolish that they will cut his neck and keep his horse. It is better that I should profit from it and take his horse. Don't you say anything. You will see what I will do." He took a large basket full of poisoned cakes and put it on a bridge where Simple John was to pass. "If he eats those cakes, he will die, and I shall take the horse." Hyena knew that Simple John was greedy, and he would surely eat the cakes. Brother Rabbit liked Simple John because one day, when he was caught in a snare, Simple John had freed him. He did not forget that and said, "I want to protect that poor fellow." And before daybreak, he waited on the road for Simple John. When he saw him, he said, "Simple John, I am coming to render you a service. Listen to me. Don't eat or drink anything on your way, even if you are dying of hunger and of thirst. And when the king will ask you to guess, you're going to reply what I'm going to tell you. Come near. I don't want anybody to hear." Brother Rabbit then told him what to say. "Yes, yes, I understand," said Simple John, and he began to laugh. "Now," said Brother Rabbit, "don't forget me when you marry the king's daughter. We can have a good business together." "Yes," said Simple John, "I shall not forget you." "Well, good luck. Pay attention to all you see, look on all sides, and listen well." Then Simple John started, and a little while afterwards he arrived at a bridge on the river. The first thing he saw was the basket full of cakes which Brother Hyena had placed there. They smelled good, and they were tempting. Simple John touched them and felt like biting one, but he remembered what Brother Rabbit had told him. He stopped for a moment and said, "Let me see if they will do harm to my horse." He took a half-dozen cakes and gave them to his horse. The poor beast died almost immediately and fell on the bridge. "See, if I had not been prudent, it is I who would be dead instead of my horse. Oh, Brother Rabbit was right. A little more and I should have been lost. Now I shall have to go on foot." Before he started, he threw his horse into the river, and as the poor beast was being carried away by the current, 3 buzzards alighted on the horse and began to eat him. Simple John looked at him for a long time, until he disappeared behind the point in the river. Brother Rabbit told me, "Listen, look, and don't say anything." "All right, I shall have something to ask the king to guess." When Simple John came to the king, nobody was trying to guess, for all those who had tried 3 times had been put to death by the king's executioner. 50 men had already been killed, and everyone said on seeing Simple John, "There's Simple John who is going to try. They will surely cut off his head, for he is so foolish. But so much the worse for him if he is such a fool." When he saw Simple John, the king began to laugh and told him to come nearer. "What is it," said he, "that early in the morning walks on 4 legs, at noon on 2, and in the evening 3 legs?" "And if I guess, you'll give me your daughter?" "Yes," said the king. "Oh, that is nothing to guess." "Well, hurrah! Hurry on if you don't want me to cut your neck." Simple John told him it was a child who walked on 4 legs. When he grew up, he walked on 2, and when he grew old, he had to take a stick, and that made 3 legs. All remained with their mouths wide open. They were so astonished. "You have guessed right. My daughter is for you. Now let anybody ask me something, as I know everything in the world. If I do not guess right, I will give him my kingdom and my fortune." Simple John said to the king, "I saw a dead being that was carrying 3 living beings and was nourishing them. The dead did not touch the land and was not in the sky. Tell me what it is, or I shall take your kingdom and your fortune." King Bang-On tried to guess. He said this and that and 1,000 things, but he had to give it up. Simple John said then, "My horse died on a bridge. I threw him into the river, and 3 buzzards alighted on him, and were eating him up in the river. They did not touch the land, and they were not in the sky." Everybody saw that Simple John was smarter than all of them together. He married the king's daughter, took his place, and governed the kingdom. He took Brother Rabbit as his first overseer, and hanged Brother Hyena for his rascality. After that, they changed Simple John's name and called him Wise John. The end.
Where I'm going to go, the sun is shining nearly every single day, my dear, but a moonlight night when the stars are bright, then the darkies sing and banjos ring on the Louisiana shore.
Wow, that first story was just so sad, with the girl just trying to please her mom and almost dying a few times. I like that the ogre was like, "Nope, she's too pretty to eat," and then even gave her a coffin. The second story reminded me of a South African story where a jackal is eating lion's cubs and they keep disappearing. Also, there's a popular story in African and Black American folklore about singing bones, and so there's probably a connection there. Kind of a gruesome story, sorry that's in there. And the final story about Simple John was just lovely. Sometimes you just gotta let people think that you are a fool. And the podcast shoutout is to Because Language. You've probably heard me talk about them before. It's Daniel, Hedwig, and Ben talking all things linguistics. They talk with cool linguists, they play fun word games, and they're just generally cool people. So go give them a listen, a rating, and a review. And also, this episode comes out just after my wife's birthday, so 여보님, 사랑해요, 생일 축하. And the listener shoutout is to Tirana Albania. This is the capital and largest city in Albania. The people in the area were first talked about as Illyrians and are part of an Indo-European family of languages, but are most closely related to the Greek and Armenian languages. The city itself was founded by an Ottoman Albanian general in 1614, but it is first mentioned in a Venetian text in 1416. The general, Suleiman Bargini, built a Turkish bath, a bakery, and a mosque, which made it an official city. In 1912, they raised the Albanian national flag, thus ending centuries of occupation from other empires. The city looks beautiful, and I would love to visit, which is no surprise. And so to my listener in Tirana, I say, Faleminderit de natin e mire. Thank you, and good night.